I'm here with Abbie Llewellyn-Waters, Fund Manager at Jupiter Asset Management and double winner at last year's Women in Investment Awards. Hi Abbie, and congratulations on winning Fund Manager of the Year, Large Firms and Investment Woman of the Year.
Thank you.
Can you share with us how your career in the investment industry began and how it's progressed?
Rather indirectly, and I think that's one of the issues that we have to address at an industry level. So financial services and fund management wasn't a visible sector to me when I was doing my degree. And as a result, I think there's a huge amount of work to be done across the industry in talking to females at school age and during their degrees for them to understand that this industry is available and a very exciting one to work in.
What challenges have you faced and how have you overcome them?
Well, in an industry which has had such poor female representation, there's a huge amount of challenges and hurdles to face at an industry level. There is a structural deficit of females working in fund management. So things like your performance track record are very important to your career as a fund manager. There are very few industries which require such continuity of performance, and fund management is one of those industries. So when you have a career break because you're having a child or something along those lines, it's actually very difficult for you to then come back and start your performance track record again. Typically, clients like to have a 3-year visibility on your ability to return capital appreciation for them. And as a result, having that continuity was one of the biggest structural hurdles I think most women as fund managers have to overcome. I was lucky enough to work in a firm whereby they were very receptive to some of the ideas that I had in terms of addressing that structural hurdle that I personally faced, but other women would also face as fund managers in the industry.
Who or what have you found to be a source of support during your career?
I think, as I mentioned in the previous answer, having a very responsive culture that is open to progress and flexibility and is creative in how they address some of those issues is very important. It was very important for me personally to feel that support coming from the most senior levels of the company, and I think that's a very important element.
What advice would you give to young women starting out in their career in the investment industry?
Seize every opportunity that you get given. There's very few industries where you have such a broad range access to extraordinary people on a daily basis. So as a fund manager, you're meeting company management teams. I'm global, so I'm doing it from around the world basis, whereby you're meeting some of the most fascinating minds in the global economy. These are the people who are leading companies through their strategic goals. And so invariably, the most exciting opportunities come just by meeting those people and having that idea generation through the conversations that prevail when you have that interaction with those types of people. So my advice would be seize every opportunity you have to learn and enjoy every moment. There's very few industries as versatile and dynamic as fund management.
As a winner of 2 Women in Investment Awards, what would you say contributed to your success?
I think, thank you for those awards, by the way. I think obviously having a good performance track record is important. So producing 4% annualised relative outperformance helped in positioning from a fund management perspective. But also, I think more broadly, the fact that I put myself into a position to ask for change and worked with the company to ensure that change helped me in terms of recognition from your perspective. So one of the elements that I'm specifically talking about was that performance continuity issue that we mentioned earlier. The structural hurdle of having that was very evident to me, but because there is a structural deficit of women in the industry, it hadn't really been challenged before because nobody had really been in a position where it was important enough for them to challenge it. Whereas for me, it was very important because I had my own track record, but I was going away on a maternity leave, and I wanted to ensure that I had that continuity because that effectively determines the trajectory of your career path. And so I worked with our compliance department, our legal department, our HR, the CIO's office. I worked with our performance team to ensure that they were comfortable that the IP of the performance that was being generated within that fund resided with me. And that's very important for women in this industry.
And how do you think gender diversity can be improved in the industry?
There is lots of low-hanging fruit of how we could improve gender diversity. Having a gold standard on performance track record retention would be a good starting point, because it sends a clear message to women in the industry that the firms support their decision to have children and will support their career progression during that period of disruption. There's also flexible work or more agile working, which at an industry level, I think we've been a bit slow to adopt. I think given the technology developments that we've seen in recent years, there's a huge opportunity to work on a more flexible basis. So shifting the balance so that our performance is measured purely on output rather than input would be a very good starting point. There's also sponsorship opportunities and mentoring and more industry-wide initiatives like the ones we're seeing at the Diversity Project, like what we're seeing at the 30% Club as well in terms of broader industry. But we've also heard it from the Hampton-Alexander Review, whereby they have identified one of the best ways to close the gender pay gap is to have a more flexible working culture as one of the tools that you can do to address that issue. And you then, in doing so, you address that particular danger zone of women who are at their mid-career point, where it just gets too difficult to juggle your family commitments, probably typically giving the timings with young children, juggle those family commitments in line with your professional commitments, and that can be a very difficult balancing act. And so to bring in a more flexible work culture that's adopted across the piece, not just women. It's very important that it's not just women who adopt the flexible working, because then it becomes a preserve of the young woman, the young mother, rather than it becoming a cultural improvement. So actually having all employees working on a more flexible basis would go much further in addressing that imbalance from a gender deficit perspective.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much for your time, Abbie.
Pleasure.